my friend Eddie Trump to the stage.
We got a problem already. You gotta be kidding me with that. I'm getting out of here, man. I'm standing up there, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
You did a pretty good job, though.
And you know what's funny? I was just out with my buddy Randy and his friends. We were just out before I came here, and I was like, you know how much fake shit is on the internet right now? And now you get that. That's exactly a prime example of the nonsense on the internet out there. Oh my God.
All right, Rick, you can pull that one off for now.
Yeah, we'll get off football because Brian and I'll start fighting, but hey, doormats no more. John Harbaugh, get ready. New Giants coming your way this September. Anyway, how you guys doing? All right, everybody good? Thank you. Thank you for coming out and hanging with me here tonight. I really do appreciate it. I think this is the third time I've done this here, I think. Three, I think, and there's always, great audience, and I say this all the time, I mean it sincerely. Every time I do something like this, I completely expect to come out and be like the scene in Spinal Tap where there's two people at the in-store. Kick my ass, I'm sorry. I really do, I honestly do. So thank you. Great to have April here, great to have the folks from Tufts Brewery bringing you free beer, right? That's cool, so you're not gonna get that at the last show. Were supposed to go to Rush last night. Oh, did anybody that was supposed to go last night not from this area traveled in from where? Atlanta. What about you?
San Diego.
Oh boy. So what happens? Are you going to try to go tomorrow, or are you going to stick around all next week? You're just going to miss it. Were you able to sell your tickets? Oh man, that sucks. That's what my mind first went to the people that had to travel because Rush fans are so passionate, they will come from all over the world. And I think the Dallas shows were like the first ones announced, as if they were like the only ones that were going to happen. So I really feel for you guys. As you see from my shirt, I went already. I went to the third show in LA, and not to rub it in, but it was pretty amazing. So.
Hey, you told them that you're going to sing Tom Sawyer tonight since they can't.
Yeah. Well, there was a rumor going around that I was bringing Getty and Alex here. I'm like, I don't know where that one came from. I never said that. That's more fake internet stuff. But yeah, they were pretty. It was pretty cool. It was pretty heavy to see a band you never thought you'd see again play live and be that good. I mean, they really were that good. So hopefully you can see them somewhere down the line. From what I saw in LA, as good as they were, I easily think it's a band that could keep going another 3-5 years because they were that good. Getty and Alex they looked great, they were in great shape, they were playing great, Getty was singing great. Obviously the drummer's doing great, Annika, so the only thing that was weird about was the keyboard player, it's kind of like, nothing wrong with him, but Getty was still like, doing all his keys, playing with his elbows, and I didn't think they were going to do that, but he was still playing a lot of keyboards, so that guy was just kind of back there chilling, having a drink, whatever, but it was cool. So anyway, how many of you guys have been here when I've done this before? How many have come back? All right, so a few. And then there's a good amount of you, obviously, who've never been here when I've done this. So many of you might be saying, what are you going to do? And the truthful answer is, I have no idea. I really don't. When I come and do this stuff, it is super spontaneous by design. I do not plan it. It's just like my radio show, if you hear it, that I do every day. Outside of maybe if I have a guest, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I just kind of react to what comes up, what the audience might want to talk about, what we talk about. The thing I'm going to try to do tonight, the one, you guys who were here last time, I think it was up here yapping for like over 2 hours. I kept saying, let me end. No, keep going. But I don't think anybody wants to hear anybody talk for 2 hours. So I'll try to keep it a little less than that at least. But really just a quick little overview story. And then happy to take any questions from anybody about any aspects of my career. And then what I've been doing lately is ending with some photos that always trigger some cool stories and some cool history, and even bring things into my mind that maybe I forgot about that I did. And I also, with the photos, same deal. I never know what's coming up. They're not planned. They're not in any sort of sequence. I see them for the first time when you do, and just kind of react and talk about them and talk about whatever memories might, come into my mind. So that's just kind of the way it is, just kind of fun and loose, and whatever we kind of get into, we just roll with. And I did actually, for the first time, put a few new photos into the montage a little earlier today, so maybe some different stuff will come up. But anyway, in a nutshell, I always like to start with just an overview, because when people meet me, or they reach out to me, or they send me an email, or they respond on social media, a lot of times people say to me, "Hey man, I love your show." And I really appreciate when people say that, but I often say to them, "What show?" And I'm not saying that to be cocky or arrogant, it's just that I find over the 43 years I've been doing this that I've connected with people on different levels, on different platforms. There's people that when they say love your show, they're talking about that metal show where he's wearing a t-shirt, thank you. There's people that when they say it, they talk about my show on Hair Nation on Mondays. There's people when they say it, maybe they're talking about my daily show on Faction Talk every day, also called Trump Nation. So it could be a lot of different things. I have an FM radio show. All these different platforms. I've done some other TV stuff. So I never really know what they mean. So I try to give everybody a little overview. And at the end of the day, for me, what it was about as a kid was my obsession with rock music. That was it. That's all I cared about as a kid was rock music. And I was introduced to rock music because I heard a band called the Raspberries, a power pop band from Cleveland. I was 10 years old. You know the Raspberries. Very influential band, but really just a one-hit wonder. But it was a pivotal moment in my life because I was 10 years old. Up to that point, I was listening to like the Partridge Family and stuff like that, like kids' music, like you would. And I was in the back seat of my parents' car, and I heard a song called Go All the Way, which was their big hit. AM radio, coming out of New York City, grew up in New Jersey. And if you've ever heard that song, starts with a very heavy, distorted guitar riff, and then goes into this really cool melodic thing. And it just, hearing that distorted guitar riff immediately, floored me. Even at 10, I was like, whoa, it was like a lightning bolt hit me. And I said to my parents, what is this band? And my parents, who I'm still very lucky, I still have both of my parents, they've always been super supportive of my love of music. And they found out it was this band called the Raspberries. So we went to my local record store the next day, and I bought the album that this song was on. And I remember the clerk thought it was weird because they were a singles band. Back then, everybody was just buying 45s. But I wanted the full album because even at 10, I needed to know everything about this band. So I would need to read the liner notes. I needed to know every song. Then I went back and bought the other records that they had. And that was like my first obsession. And then shortly after that, a year or so after that, walking home from junior high school, and I would walk by a record store in my hometown, and my friend said to me, hey, I'm gonna go in and buy a record. And I said, oh yeah, what are you gonna get? He goes, I'm buying a record by this band called Kiss. And I was like, I never heard of them. And this was 1976. And he said, yeah, they're cool, you should check them out, they look wild and all that. Walked to the record store, and at the time, the new album was Rock and Roll Over. And that's the one he was buying. And he said to me, look, if you want to get into this band, he said, this is the new album, I haven't heard it yet, I don't know how it is, but get the previous one because it's great. So I got some money together, and yes, Destroyer was the previous record. So I bought Destroyer, and I took it home. And for you guys that don't know about the Raspberries on their album cover, true story, are in a leisure suit. They're in leisure suits. They're in literally leisure suits. Well, here's Kiss, on rocks, fire, blood, and I'm like, holy shit. Drop the needle, Detroit Rock City, looking at the cover, and the Raspberries records went right out the window. It's like, holy shit. And then that's really where the spark went, and that's when I really went into this whole crazy world of being consumed with Kiss. Every poster on my wall was Kiss, and it was just nuts. And it's a common story. Anybody around my age, I'm 61. I mean, if you grew up at that time, that was a big gateway band for you. So that was my love, and it was like all I wanted to try to do was share this music that I loved with other people. And from there I got into Aerosmith and Black Sabbath and Van Halen and Rush and all these bands that were at that time kind of in the middle of their career. And I just became consumed with it. But, you know, I was in high school. I graduated high school in 1982, and I was terrible in high school. Like, I just eked out of high school. It wasn't because I was dumb. It was because I just didn't care about anything but rock music, like history, math, sports, whatever. I just needed to be learning more about rock music. So I started doing a series of things, even in high school. I started writing the music column to my high school newspaper. And if you find those articles, and I have them, and there's a documentary coming out later this year or next year about my career. It's almost done. I've not seen it yet, but it's going to be really cool. There's a lot of cool people in it, and by design, the director won't show it to me yet, but he says it's going to be amazing. The only problem is it's like 3 hours long now, so he's trying to cut it down. But we've got everybody in this. Slash and Duff and Sammy Hagar, and the last ever interview with Ace Frehley is in this. So it's going to be really cool. But anyway, in that doc, when it comes out, I found some of my articles when I was writing in high school this column. And I'm writing about Kiss and Van Halen and Sammy Hagar and UFO and AC/DC. So not a lot has changed in the last 43 years, basically. But that's when it really all started at. And then when I was in high school, my hometown in New Jersey has 3 colleges, and they had come to the senior year and said, hey, anybody want to learn about radio? And the students one summer were going on their break for the summer, and they wanted seniors at the local high school to come and check out the radio station and keep it on the air. So I immediately raised my hand and went and did that. And that's the first time I ever turned on a microphone and queued up a record. And when I mean queued up a record, I mean back then, there were no CDs, there was no computers. It was literally you playing records with a turntable, with a needle, and how to learn the art of DJ, which really wasn't art back then. So that's when I first got interested in radio. All of this while I was still in high school. So when I got out of high school, the idea of college or anything was no, I gotta chase this path. And I couldn't play anything. I wanted to be a musician, but I could not play. I took drum lessons for a minute, but I got real frustrated because I was impatient. I didn't have the discipline to want to learn. I just wanted to immediately be Peter Criss on Kiss Alive 2 on the riser with the flames going up, you know? So I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to play music, but I'm going to try to help all these bands and push and support this music that I love and have it treated respectfully. Because when I was in high school, I was made fun of for the bands that I liked. I was in high school 79 to 82. For any Kiss fans out there, now remember, I'm the biggest Kiss fan in the world at this point. Kiss shirt every day, Kiss stickers on my notebook. 1979 to 1982 were the most brutal years imaginable to be a Kiss fan. You're talking Dynasty, the disco record. You're talking Unmasked, the pop record. You're talking The Elder, the concept record. Kiss, for you guys that weren't, Kiss is now mainstream pop culture. People physically wanted to beat my ass for being a Kiss fan. And I'm not exaggerating that at all. If I was not a big kid, I would have had my ass beaten routinely just for being a Kiss fan. That's how uncool Kiss was at that time. I had a guy that used to ram the bumper on my car my senior year, every year with his car, because it had a Kiss bumper sticker on it. That's how nuts it was, right? But that bothered me, like, and I was goofed on a lot about the music, and I'm like, I'm gonna treat these bands respectfully, and I'm gonna still keep pushing this stuff out. So that was part of the drive too, you know, how can I share this music with other people? And that's all it was about. So, did radio when I was still in high school. And then from there, I started this thing called The Metal Show. At that time, nobody was doing a heavy metal show on commercial radio. There was maybe one or two others in the country. This is 1983, the year after I got out of high school. I was working at a record store. I was still doing freelance writing. So at 18, I was selling music to people. I was writing about music to people. And I was playing music on my local rock radio station one time a week, on the weekend, late at night. But the most important thing, and it was the only thing that I insisted on, was that I was able to do what I wanted. So most people, when they went on the radio, you had to play a playlist. You had to play what they told you to play. If you didn't, you would be fired. It's one thing that people still to this day don't understand about radio. The DJ, in 95% of the cases, has nothing to do with what they play. Nothing. Even going back to the 70s and 80s, nothing to do with what they play. Maybe the 70s a little bit, but certainly from around the late 80s on, completely scripted from a playlist. For me, that didn't work, because the whole reason I wanted to do radio was not because I thought I had some kind of radio voice or that I could, you know, I wanted to be on the radio. It was because it was a way to share the music with a broader audience. So if I couldn't take in my records and play them for people, what was the point? A lot of people got into radio and traveled the country to try to make it in radio because they just liked being on the air. They didn't care if they were playing country, jazz, rock, pop. They just wanted to be on the air. And that's fine. For me, I couldn't care less. It was a tool to get music out to other people and share it. Because again, this is long before the internet. So that was my thing. And when I went in and I got this job, which is a long story how I got the job, but I said to the program director, I said, I've got to play my own records. I got to play what I want to play. So they put me on at like midnight on a Friday night, 2-3 hours a week. I didn't care. I just wanted to be able to be left alone and do what I want to do. And that very early on was probably one of the most important decisions I ever made, because it branded me with something. I wasn't just a voice between records. I became known as the rock guy, the hard rock guy, the metal guy, whatever they wanted to call me. But people knew when they came to me, they were getting something different, they were getting something unique, and it was from a point of passion. It wasn't like, here's Hotel California for the 9 billionth time, you know, here's You Shook Me All Night Long for the 10 billionth time. Look, I did some of that in my career, and I got no problem with it. You want to pay me to do that? I could do it in my sleep. But that wasn't the creativity of radio. That wasn't the reason why I got into it. So I always, my whole career, had shows where I could do my own thing. And that led to a lot of opportunity, because nobody was doing anything like that. I was one of the first people in the country to play Metallica. And there's a crazy story about that, but that was my first year in radio. And Metallica, you know, all their roots are in New Jersey. Even though they're from California, their first label, Megaforce, was based in New Jersey. And they spent a lot of time in New Jersey, maybe 45 minutes from where I grew up, when they were very young, starting out. And the guy who signed them and put out the first 2 records, the late Johnny Z, the company was called Megaforce. And he had a flea market record store. And he came to me one night, my first year on radio. And I'm in the middle of doing a radio show. I'm still very nervous. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. And he knocks on the door to the radio station. And he says to me, he goes, what the hell's the guy from the flea market doing out there? I say, I gotta come in. He's got a bag under his arm. He comes in, I go, what's going on? He goes, you gotta help me out. I said, John, what's up? He goes, I got this band, I mortgaged my house to make this record. He's like, if it doesn't happen, I'm gonna lose my house. I'm up against it, man. I gotta have somebody play this band on the radio. You're the only guy that can help me out. I'm like, what is it? And he pulls out of the bag Kill 'Em All. And I did not know Metallica. I mean, again, this is very early. And I said, leave it. I'll check it out. If I like it, maybe I'll play it. No, you don't understand. I'm not leaving until you play it. I'm like, John, like, I'm a kid. My hands are shaking still when I'm queuing up records. I'm like, dude, what are you doing to me, man? No, you gotta play it, man. You gotta play it. So I just wanted to get him out of there. So I played, the song I played was Jump in the Fire. And I played it, and took it off, played the next record, handed him back the album, and I'll never forget it. He signed on the cover, Ed, you were the first, or something like that. Thank you for believing, John Z. And he said to me when he left, he said, if I can ever get this band to happen, because you did this for me, I'm going to hire you to work for my record company. And I swear to God, I looked at him, I'm like, yeah, like anything's going to ever happen with that band. I swear, I was like, that sounded like a car crash, man. That's a train wreck. Like anybody's ever going to play that band on the radio. Good luck, pal. You better start looking for another house because you're going to lose it. Like, I would love to sit here and tell you, oh, I heard the Future and I knew they were going to be huge. No. I was like, there ain't no way anything happens with that band. You gotta remember, this is 83. I'm listening to Van Halen and AC/DC and Kiss. I didn't hear anything like Hit the Lights before. I was like, go scared shitless. I'm like, that's insane. Of course, you know, Metallica ended up doing okay, I think, you know. But he was good to his word, because about 3 years later, you know, I of course saw Metallica start to go up. And about 3 years later, he called me up. And he said, hey, I got some good news, I got some bad news. I said, what's that? He said, well, obviously you see Metallica's taken off. I said, yeah. He goes, well, I told you I'm gonna hire you, I'm gonna hire you. And I said, really? He goes, yeah, why don't you come work for Megaforce? You're gonna be my first employee. And I was like, oh, great. That's amazing. He said, yeah. He said, well, what's the bad news? He goes, well, the bad news is you're going to be working out of my house in my garage. You're going to have to keep an eye on my 2-year-old daughter in between phone calls. He smoked nonstop weed and cigarettes, so you're going to get contact high and possibly lung cancer. And you're not going to be working with Metallica because the reason why I can afford to hire you is because they are leaving me because they're getting big. They had just signed with Elektra Records. So he said to me, you know, they're out the door, but in the settlement, because see, he had them sign label and management. So he got a big settlement. So he's like, in the legal settlement, we're going to build a record company. And that company, you know, was Megaforce. So first day I get there, sure enough, I walk in and there's the kid in the crib and there's my phone extension on the floor. And I'm like, this with the smoke. And it was in his house in Old Bruce, New Jersey. And that's where we started. And the first thing I did actually was issue Kill 'Em All on CD, because CDs were a new format at the time. And if you have the Megaforce version of Kill 'Em All on CD, it has my name on the back on a credit. It says CD preparation Ed Trunk. People often say to me, is that you? I was like, yeah, they have no idea this story. So it was great. And then Johnny had said to me, after we started working together for about a year, at that point we had Metallica. Well, Metallica just left. We had Anthrax, we had Raven, we had Manowar, we had a few other bands I can't think of at the moment. But it was very, at the time, very heavy stuff. Nothing that really could get played on the radio. And one day I said to Johnny, I said, you know, look, John, I think we should sign an act that's still a hard rock act that maybe though could get on the radio. And he's like, well, what do you got in mind? And I said, well, again, going back to being such a Kiss freak, I said, what about Ace Frehley? Johnny was not a Kiss fan. And he's like, well, I don't know much about Kiss. I said, well, their original guitar player is out there. I said, I think it'd be worth a shot for us to sign him. He could get radio play. He could sell a lot of records. The Kiss fans, they're all looking for him and wanting to hear from him. And Ace had been playing clubs around the New York area, and I went to a couple of the shows, and they were all packed and they were good. So we tracked Ace down through the producer, Eddie Kramer. And we had lunch with him in New York City. And you gotta remember, man, this is for me 10 years, less than 10 years. My first concert was Kiss, December 1977 at Madison Square Garden. And here I am less than 10 years later, and I'm trying to be all professional, walking into a lunch meeting in my early 20s to meet and potentially sign one of the founding lead guitarists of the band. So I played it cool on the exterior, but inside I'm like, holy shit, what is this fucking nuts, right? So we had a good lunch. I remember Ace ordered a tuna sandwich. I remember like it was yesterday, and a Diet Coke or Diet Soda. And we had a great meeting. And John was still unsure about letting me sign him, though, because Ace was very much viewed as a liability at that time. He was doing crazy shit. He was off the rails. He had just gotten arrested for driving his car against the wrong way of traffic over the George Washington Bridge. All this crazy, erratic, drug, alcohol-fueled stuff. So people were afraid of him. They were afraid to take a chance on signing him. But Eddie Kramer assured us he was better. I felt it was worth taking the chance. Because a lot of times people always say, well, why wouldn't a guy from Kiss sign with a big major label? They wouldn't touch him. So we ended up signing Ace Frehley. And I don't know if it's going to come up when we get to the photos, but there is a photo from that day, which is incredible still to see. We made that first album, Frehley's Comet. It did very well. It almost became a gold record. And my first signing to a label was the founding guitarist of the band that started me in rock music, really. So it really became this crazy full circle moment. And there's a lot of people that have no idea that I worked for a record label. But that was another big part of what I did. But all through that, I still kept my radio show. I have never stopped doing radio, no matter what else I've done in my career, since I first started professionally in radio in '83. I never stopped. I always did it, whether it was on the weekend, one show a week, 3 shows a week, whatever it was, because I love doing it, and I wanted to have that outlet. So I always just added things, but I never took away completely doing a radio show of some kind. I never stopped working in a record store for the longest time. I worked in a record store for many, many years. It was really, even before radio, it was one of my first jobs. It was super important because it forced me to learn about music, even if it was stuff that I personally didn't like. To this day, people are shocked when I can talk about something like Kaja Gugu, or Men Without Hats. Like, how the fuck do you know about that? I had to sell it. We sold it, we played it, you had to know about it. So that was good for overall awareness of music as well. And then of course the perks back then that came with working in a record store. You got free tickets, you got free albums, so that was always cool too. So I always just was like a sponge, everything and anything that I could do. And that's really how it went for the longest time. And my radio career continued because I was known for something. So I ended up going from New Jersey, where I was working on a fairly small radio station, to New York City radio. And even though it's only a 30-minute drive into New York from where I lived, it's completely game-changing because you go from like market 70 to market number 1. Suddenly you're broadcasting to a couple counties, then all of a sudden you're broadcasting to 3 states. And many more people are now taking notice. Again, there was no streaming, there was no internet. You had to be in the signal range to hear whatever radio you were doing. So it's all about getting to the bigger markets. But I never was that guy that was like the radio junkie that was going to drive across country looking for the bigger outlets. I never left my home area. I just stayed there, and I was lucky enough to build up the ladder into New York City radio. In 2000, I started on what was just XM radio. There used to be two. You know, there used to be warring companies, Sirius and XM. I went with XM in 2000 because they were, at the time, they were willing to let me do anything I wanted on the radio. Sirius at the time also offered me the chance to go there, but they wanted to control what I did. So it was a no-brainer decision to go to XM. So I started doing a weekly show on XM, same deal, music, talk, requests, guests, and that was unique for satellite radio at the time. So people immediately kind of gravitated to that, and it became a pretty cool thing. Then the companies merged and became one, and I stayed. Obviously, to this day, I'm still there. And then, one of the cool things that happened 10 years ago, exactly, was that for the longest time, I only did one show a week on Sirius XM. And then 10 years ago, an old program director came to me from a job I had previous, and he said, hey, look, I saw him walking around the hallways at Sirius, and I said, hey, what are you doing here? He goes, I'm starting a new channel. And I said, yeah, what's that? He goes, it's going to be a music talk channel. It's going to be a channel where we do, everybody does nothing but talk about music. We don't actually play it. And I said, that's an interesting idea, because I always feel like wherever I go, people want to talk about music with me. And the other thing that I saw coming down the pike is that you don't need anybody to play you music anymore if you want to hear something. Because I can tell you a band or a song right now, and in 2 seconds, all of you could hear it in a minute on your phone. Less than a minute. So I still feel it's important to play music for people, and I still do a couple shows that actually play songs in. But when you think about it, that's really something that's almost like going away, because anyone can dial up any song. It's more about getting tipped off as to what's cool and what you may like, because there's so much stuff out there in the market that it is actually sitting there and playing it for you. So I love the idea. And that time, the channel was called Volume. And he said to me, I want you to be on for a couple hours every day and be the rock guy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in. And I started doing that. And then there was all other shows. I don't know how many of you guys remember this channel. It ended about 4 or 5 years ago. But there were all other shows around me. Mark Goodman was doing a show and a bunch of cool stuff around me. But they were doing everything. Like, those shows talked about every kind of music. They would talk about Britney Spears 1 minute. They talked about Metallica 1 minute. They talked about Johnny Cash 1 minute. I was like, look, I gotta stay in my lane. When people come to me, they gotta know they're gonna get rock. So they were cool with that. And unfortunately, about 4 or 5 years ago, channel lasted about 5 years, but about 5 years ago, they took it down. It went away. They changed it, and it went away. But I was the only show they kept. And they moved me to the channel I'm currently on every day, which is called Faction Talk, Channel 103. And I'm on every day. Local time would be 2 to 4 here, live, doing a rock talk show. And in the past, I've actually done it right from this stage when I've come to town to do something, because I could do it from anywhere. But I didn't this time because I just took a couple of days off from it. But for those of you that hear that show, which is also called Trunk Nation, that show, the show I've been doing for the last 10 years, every day on the radio, is probably for me the most fun I've ever had doing radio. Like, don't get me wrong, I've loved all the different radio shows I've done and all the different platforms. But I call what I do now sports talk for rock fans. And I love going on every day and being able to take calls from people and give my thoughts and get their thoughts and have debates and great interviews and all this stuff, and it to be fresh and current every day. So I'm loving what I'm doing right now. It just took 10 years. And it's something I genuinely look forward to every day. We built a really cool community of people that listen to that every day. Because you can listen to it on the app as well if you can't listen in those hours. So that's been great. And of course, the big thing that I left out before we get to some questions and photos is, of course, that metal show. And the story of that metal show is also an interesting one. I was a host for VH1 Classic, the channel that metal show was on, for about 4 years. I was on the channel as a VJ host from 2003 till around 2007. And I don't know how many of you guys saw the channel back then. It was not in that many homes, but it was pretty cool. We had a studio. I did tons of interviews with people, like really cool stuff. We used to have live performances. I went to England twice and interviewed Robert Plant. I interviewed Sabbath in England. We had performances in our studio. We had different guests coming by. It was amazing. Again, the channel wasn't in a ton of homes, so some people didn't see that stuff. The other thing I did back then on that show was I interviewed every kind of artist. I did not do just rock. I interviewed one day Earth, Wind, and Fire. Today I saw somebody make a post, it's Carly Simon's birthday, it came into my mind. I went to Martha's Vineyard and interviewed Carly Simon. Like stuff you'd never expect me to do. But it was a cool experience, you know, and I had a chance to be on TV and learn and get into some stuff outside of my comfort zone, and it was great. But what I didn't like about it was that it was very controlled. They told me how to dress. They dressed me. You know, you see some of the stuff I'm wearing if you see those old clips or old photos. But again, I'm on TV. I got to take direction. How to dress a certain way, act a certain way, and I was even told what I could and could not ask. Things were very scripted. And I went along with it. I bent the rules a little bit where I could, but I went along with it because, again, I was happy to have the gig, and I was hoping to get it to a point where they would let me do my own thing. And then finally, around 2006-ish, VH1 Classic as a channel shut down operations. We had like 3 VJs, I was one of them, there were 2 others. We had a studio in the West Village in New York, we had a full staff, editing, camera, everything. One day they just decided, boom, cutting budgets, all done. And one day everyone was canned. And the channel stayed on the air, but they just went into this mode of running replays and old music videos, that's all it was. So it was during that time, after they did that for about a year, they realized that there's only so many times you can show Def Leppard Photograph and have people watch it. So they called me up and they said, they remembered I kept pounding on them to do my own show. And I pitched all these ideas. So around 2007, they called me and they said, hey, why don't you come in and talk about this idea you want to do for a new show? Because we do need to put something back on the channel that's original. So at the time, do you guys know a comedian? You know the comedian Jim Brewer? You know Jim Brewer, right? Goat Boy. So Brewer was living in New Jersey, and Brewer was doing a radio show from his parents' basement, as Brewer would do. And he would call me up, and he didn't live far from me, and he was like, dude, you gotta come over and sit in with me, right, man? He goes, I can't believe all this shit you know about rock. You gotta come on. So Brewer and I would have some fun and do this radio show. And one day I went over there and I said, Brewer says on the air, he goes, hey man, we're gonna have Eddie Trunk hang out with us today, and you know, Eddie knows so much shit about these bands. He goes, we're gonna do something today, we're gonna call it Stump the Trunk. Really? Like what, Jim? You want to tell me about this first? Because, you know, I love Jim. He's like, we're going to do Stump the Trunk! You know? And I'm like, so he started having people call in and say, like, you know, ask Eddie anything, watch, he's going to know the answer. And he made this bit. So then I told Brewer that I had been talking to VH1 about trying to get a show going. And Brewer told me he was as well. He was trying to do a show at the time that was going to be called Heavy Metal Man. And His concept was like it was a dad by day and at night this heavy metal superhero. It's Brewer, he's probably baked out of his skull, right? So, he and I decided we're gonna like pool our efforts and try to come up with something that was like, a mashup of the ideas. And we went up and we pitched this. I remember we shot like a pilot at one point. And then we went up and we shot these ideas to VH1. And they loved it. They were like, this is great. We love the two of you guys together. This is amazing. So we started progressing the ideas. And we were about to, they offered us a great contract for the two of us to do this show. And just before we were about to sign the contract, Brewer decided he didn't want to do the show. To this day, I'm not entirely sure why. I think probably because, he brought in these ideas that he wanted to own. And for those of you that don't know, when you take a job with a TV network or something like that, even if you bring in an idea, it becomes their property. It's usually in the contract that it will become their thing. And I don't think he liked that. And look, I wouldn't like it either, but for me, I was just like, I want to do a TV show, man. So he bailed on it. And it kind of left me in a spot, because I'm like, okay, now what do I do? Because the network had no interest in doing a TV show without me and Brewer together. So I kept pushing them, and I'm like, let's not abandon this idea. Maybe we could rethink it. Maybe there's another way that we can do this. I said, look, I've got two good friends. They're both also stand-up comics, and they are legitimately huge rock fans. And they come in and sit in with me sometime on my radio show. And I'm talking, of course, about Don and Jim. And I said to those guys, I said, hey guys, listen, there's this show I'm trying to get going. Brewer bailed on it. I'm trying to bring you guys in. And I told the network, and the network said, look, we don't know them, but if you want, get a demo from them. Let's see what they're all about. And if we like it, we'll have a meeting and we'll consider it. So I called Don and Jim. I said, guys, we got a shot here. All the groundwork's done. They just need to see you guys in action. They need to see what you're capable of, what you can bring to the table. It's like, give me like a video reel or something of your best work. Yeah, okay. Send me an email with a link. I take that link and I forward it to the woman who was the head of VH1. And like an idiot, I did not look at the link before I sent it. Because, big gig, right? I mean, this is going to be their best comedy, I figured, whatever it was. And I just wrote a note, and I said, these are my friends. We would be a great team. Please, let's have a meeting and consider this, whatever I wrote. Sent. About 20 minutes later, I get a response to the email. And it read, in all caps, these are your friends? With like 17 question marks after it. My heart dropped. What the fuck did these idiots just do? Now you see, those guys have been trying to get something going on TV forever, so they were so like beaten by the system that they didn't believe anything, right? And they just like, fuck it, send this, see what happens. And I opened now the email comes back and I open the link, I'm like, oh my God. So I hit the link to see what they had me sent. This is a true story. It was a video These guys had been doing a video series called Meet the Creeps. Appropriate. And the video was Jim wearing glasses with a hidden camera in the glasses. They were in a shitty hotel room in Newark, New Jersey. Dawn, picture this as a toilet. So this is the part you would sit, right? Dawn was up here on the tank with his pants off, shitting in the upper bowl. As Jim stood up for him, remember it's all being filmed by the glasses, coaching him. Do it, do it. I mean, it's human Beavis and Butthead. It really is. And then Dawn shits in the upper part of the bowl. They put the lid on. And then Jim goes over to the phone in the hotel room and calls the front desk. You gotta come up to 203. Something's wrong with the toilet. Come look. Guy answers the door. What's going on in here, man? He goes, Jim, like, look at the toilet. Something's wrong. Guy goes, what's wrong? Flush it. If you don't know what happens when you do that, this guy must have done it because he's gonna fall over from laughing. That's known as an upper decker. And what happens when you do that is when you flush the toilet, shit comes into the bowl instead of going out. So the front door clerk, the desk clerk, flushed the toilet and shit, oh my God, and Jim's like, see, I told you something's wrong. That was the video, those assholes. Had me sent for the most important gig of my life. After this woman recovered after a couple days, she called me up and she said, you know, after we thought about it, we kind of got to meet these guys. Anybody that would do anything like that, we kind of have to meet. So I called them up, I'm like, you're not going to believe this, but we got to meet him. And I go, none of you better not shit in the bowl at the fucking office. So we go, we have this meeting, we all sit down, we all knock around a bunch of ideas. They brought some ideas to the table. I brought some ideas to the table. We all decided we wanted to do this, you know, basically like the equivalent of like the Tonight Show with rock bands. And the one thing that VH1 was adamant about was keeping that Stump the Trunk segment, which I felt weird about because Brewer brought that in, but they didn't care. They're like, who cares? It's your last name, it's a trivia segment. At that time, ESPN had a host and a segment, they were doing a sports thing called Stump the Schwab. And they were like, ESPN's doing it, what's the difference? You just put your name in it, you're doing rock music. So I couldn't fight them on it, it was up to them, they wanted to do it. So I'm like, okay, I had no idea it was gonna become such a thing, but I'm like, you know, whatever it took to get the show on. So we did our first ever episode, and I don't know, I always wondered, this is always good trivia for you guys, does anybody know who the first ever guest was in the history of that metal show? Not Brian, he's heard me do this 3 times. Not Yngwie. Yngwie was early. Yngwie was the idea for the guitar players in the audience. He gave us that idea, that's another story. Now, the first ever guest was Lita Ford. Yeah, and it was 2000, we debuted in 2008, and I really wanted to get, for our first guest, someone who had not been seen constantly on VH1. Because even though VH1 was our sister channel, people to this day was like, oh, you're on VH1. We were not on VH1, we were on VH1 Classic. It was the baby channel of VH1. And that was a big part of the problem because we never had big budgets to work with. But anyway, I wanted to make sure we got someone that was not overexposed. At that time, VH1 was running all those shows, Behind the Music and Rock Blocks and all this stuff. It was all great stuff, but you saw a lot of the same people on those shows all the time. Dee Snider, Scott Ian, all great, but it was the same stuff. I wanted to get somebody that people had not seen before, or hadn't seen in a long time. Lita had been living on an island off the grid for like 12 years, and nobody had seen her in forever. And she had reached out to me about doing my radio show. And when she did, I said to her, hey, I'm trying to do this pilot for a new TV show. Would you be up for doing it? And she said yes. And that was huge. So she came and did the show. We shot the pilot. It aired in 2008, the very first episode. Did well. We got picked up for a season. We got picked up for another season. And we ended up lasting 14 seasons until 2016, I think. We've been off about 10 years now. But it's amazing because to this day I get asked about the show everywhere I go. Recently, someone online has been circulating clips from it on Facebook, which I think is great. I love that they're doing it. It's out there still. People ask me all the time about bringing it back. It's not mine to bring back. People don't quite understand that. The old shows are owned by the network. If we were to do new shows, the name of the show is owned by my old producer. I've tried everything in the last 10 years, but it's very frustrating for me because it very much was my baby, but I don't have any control over it. We could do something under a different name and change some stuff, which could always happen, but it's a tricky thing. But I appreciate so many people that still ask me about it and care about it. I honestly don't obsess about it at all because I'm doing currently 6 live shows a week on SiriusXM, a podcast, an FM radio show, and tons of stuff like this. So I'm super happy with what I'm doing, but if somebody had the opportunity or the way to bring it back, I'd do it again. All 3 of us would do it again tomorrow. But the only thing about it that I've always said if we ever did it again is it's gotta be at least at the level of what it was. Which, let's be honest, what it was pretty much close to Wayne's World, so it wasn't exactly. So it's not a high bar, but I wanted to at least be of that level. And what I mean by that is a set, a live audience. I want that energy. Everybody on the planet now has a podcast. I want it to be something that's a little different than that. And that was the idea back then as well, to do something that was a little different. So we'll see. We tried, Don and Jim and myself, a couple years ago, we started doing a show together on YouTube because we just wanted people think like we're not friends or we had some fight or something. And they all fuel that because anyone asks Don, why isn't the show on? He'll go, because Eddie doesn't want to bring it back, he's being difficult. And then if you run into Jim and ask him, he goes, ask Eddie, it's his fault, he won't do it, we try. It's all bullshit. They're just fucking with it. So I was like, you know what, guys, let's do something to show and spark interest, maybe. So we did this show on YouTube. We called it That Rocks. We did like 6, 7 episodes. And I said to them, I'm like, it's not going to work because people are going to be like, it's not the old show. Of course it's not the old show. It's 3 guys on Zoom. But, they're like, let's try it. But sure enough, even though we said, this isn't that metal show. After the first episode, we were, it's not the old show. No shit, it's not the old show. And then we had problems with people like, whenever you do stuff like that, you're at the mercy of everyone's internet connection. That guy's cutting out. That guy looks great. That guy's audio's not working. And then the straw that broke the camel's back is we had Paul Rogers on, and Paul's audio wasn't working on his end. He lives in Canada. I just don't get internet there. I don't know. I'm joking, I love Paul, but his audio was all fucked. So we had this whole thing with Paul Rogers, it never came out, we couldn't use it. I'm like, that's it, I can't do this. We're all in a million directions. They're running around doing comedy, I do what I do. I'm like, until we can do it the right way, I don't want to do it, and that's why we kind of let that thing go. But I appreciate the hell out of people asking me about it, and I'm super proud of it, and I don't rule out ever doing it again. And it's Don and Jim's fault that I don't. No, I'm just kidding. But just make sure you tell them that I said that.
Next time we'll bring them here and we'll do a McKinney Metal Show or Dallas Metal Show.
Say again?
So the next time we'll just bring both of them with you and we'll do a live That Metal Show right from
Oh,
there.
we used to do shows like this together, the three of us. Yeah, we used to do the three-headed shows. As a matter of fact, we just talked about doing some of those, like the 10th year anniversary of our cancellation tour. And last thing on that is that people always ask me about the end of the show. Like, you know, why were you guys canceled? We were not canceled. The entire network was canceled. We knew when we did the last season, which was the 14th season, we knew that it was the last season for VH1 Classic because they came to us and told us that they were going to discontinue the channel and rebrand the channel as MTV Classic, which they have since done. It's funny, to this day, people come up to me like, man, I don't see your show anymore because I don't get the channel. I'm like, nobody gets the channel. Doesn't exist anymore. They rebranded it. They went through this whole rebranding thing, and that's what happened. But what they told us in the last season was that they had intended to keep us and move us to one of the other channels that the company owned. The company is Viacom, who owns tons of channels, Comedy Central, regular VH1. So it was going to be bigger and better. We were excited because we were told we were going to go more budgets, more money, this and that. And that was the plan. And then what happened was we end, the channel ends, and then all the people that told us that ended up taking other jobs or getting fired. So we were all just kind of twisting in the wind, and that's why nothing ever ended up happening there with it. So it's been, it was a crazy, unbelievable ride. I could sit here for hours and tell you stories just about those shows and those tapings. But what we should probably do now, I'm going to see what time it is, because again, I don't want to keep you guys all night and bore you to tears here, but yeah, we still got some time. So what I want to do is, any questions you guys have about anything in my career, I'm happy to answer a couple things. And then we got some photos. We'll go a little photo montage. I'll give you a few stories on that, and then we'll call it. So Brian, you have a mic, or is there a mic in the audience?
I got a mic.
Brian in the back's got a mic so we can hear it. Anybody have a question about anything? Blue shirt right up here, Brian. Let's get a mic on you so we can hear it.
Yeah, all these interviews, like Robert Plant twice and everything, are these saved for posterity? I mean, are these available for the public to see? I mean, this is great stuff.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I think about that too, because just for me personally, VH1 is sitting on a gold mine of content, which I have no control over and do not own. And that's really frustrating. The initial idea of VH1 Classic as a channel when it was on the air was to run all the archival stuff. And then that kind of went away and they never did that. Are they saved? Yeah. I mean, I personally have bins in my basement. Most of that stuff back then is on VHS, because that's what it was at the time. Is somebody applauding for VHS? 8 tracks, yeah. I mean, I'm retro, man, but that's really pushing it. But yeah, VHS and some stuff I burned on CD. They wouldn't even give me copies of it. I remember I used to sit in front of I bought a DVD player that recorded, and I would sit there with the pause waiting to catch my stuff. So I had a copy of it. But yes, it does exist. Some of it is on YouTube. Sometimes fans will upload it, but then sometimes they pull it down, sometimes they don't. The interview that I did with Neil Peart, I did an interview with Neil Peart during that Metal Show period, which is often talked about because Neil never did stuff like that. And I did an hour with him. The interview show on that channel back then was called Hanging With. And that's on YouTube. That keeps getting popped up. So if you search Eddie Trunk Neil Peart, that should come up. But all the other stuff with the Robert Plant one's up there too, because actually somebody just sent me a link that somebody put it up. So it goes up, sometimes it comes down, but it's around, a lot of it.
Okay, quick music question now. what was your reaction to the first Van Halen album? Because to me it was so different than the standard rock that was being played at that time. Did you get that feeling?
Yeah, first Van Halen album I got through a record club. You guys remember Columbia Record Club? 13 albums for 1 penny. How could there be a catch? I remember at one point they actually gave you the penny so you could tape it onto the thing on the back of the TV guide and mail it in. And then my mom would be like, what do you mean I gotta buy 12 more records at $72 each? And the reason why I got the first Van Halen album, this is really shows what a Kiss nerd I was, is because the first person thanked on that record was Gene Simmons. So I'm like, it's gotta be good, Kiss is thanked on it, I gotta get it. But yeah, I mean, when I first heard it, because I got the first record before there was anything else out, when it first came out. 70, 78, so I would have been 13, 14. Yeah, like everybody, I mean, I was floored. I mean, it was like, you know, just hearing the siren into Running with the Devil, the bass thump, and, you know, just the guitar playing. I mean, yeah, it was, I mean, like everybody, I was completely consumed. You gotta understand though, again, this speaks to what a Kiss complete nerd I was at that time. For a time, I was so crazy with Kiss that any other band, to me, as a kid, was a threat to Kiss. So even though I'm listening to this mind-blowing record, I'm like, it's not as good as Detroit Rock City. It's not as good as I Want You. It's not as good as Love Will Leave 'Em. It's not as good as Love Gun. You know, even though I'd mind if I knew, like, whoa, that shit's next level. In my mind, I'm like, I got my walls up. I'm like, no. I used to fight with people all the time, like, fuck that band Led Zeppelin. Like, what? People used to be like, you should hear Rush, man, with 3 guys, they play circles around Kiss. And I'm like, oh yeah, and then I found out, you know who opened more shows for Kiss than any other band? Rush. I'm like, damn, I take that, you know? So back then, that was my mentality. And, you know, a couple years later, I was just full in on Van Halen. And of course, obviously, it's amazing. It's funny, I don't know how to play anything, but I did make Michael Anthony, who's become a great friend, actually show me how to do. It's the only thing I know how to play, I think. Anything else? Up front here in the AIC shirts.
Eddie, I know you almost got to do Page on that metal show, right?
Jimmy Page?
Yeah.
No.
But I thought you told the story maybe I'm wrong. But
No, it used to be, we used to laugh because people used to always come up to me when they were doing the show, and they'd be like, hey Eddie, I got an idea. How about Jimmy Page on that metal show? Oh, I never thought of that. Oh, you might be pretty good. Like, you know, people had to want to do the show. We were super close to getting him in the last season when they were doing the Zeppelin reissues. And he would not do the show because of the name of the show. He won't do anything with metal in the name. And we even were willing to call it that Jimmy Page show. We were going to change the name, anything we would have done. But he was like so programmed, and we even made a reel to show him, oh, here's Hart on, here's Paul Rogers on. By the way, I did not want the show to be called That Metal Show. I was adamantly against it. Another true story. They gave me a name, the network gave me a name of 20 names that they had checked to see if they could clear for copyright. And they said, what do you like? And I said, I'm good with any of them but one. And the but one was That Metal Show. And the reason why is because I knew we would have to be beyond metal. Like when people heard that, they're like, every week we're just gonna have Slayer and Sepultura on. And I'm like, no, we need to be broader than that. And I wanna be rock and metal, just like what I do now on the radio show every day. I mean, I've gotten way broader on that. I just had Brian Setzer on the other day. But I wanted it to be a full-on, you know, more of a rock thing so that we could have Paul Rogers on and people were like, that's not fucking metal. So that was the problem we ran into. Paul Rogers did come on, and Nancy Wilson did come on. But some of these guys were like, you know, sit there next to Lemmy or something. That's not my thing, you know. But anyway, yeah, Jimmy Page never did it.
Well, what I was saying is, I guess, is there like the white whale, like person who's still living, that you have an interview that would be like the one you would like to have on your show? You know, talk to plenty of people like Axel and stuff. But like in your career, is there somebody you haven't talked to yet that you want to talk to?
Overall, you mean?
That's still living, yes.
Yeah, I get that one a lot. As far as an interview, definitely Jimmy Page. I met him briefly twice, but I never interviewed him. So I'd love to sit down and interview him. Before he died, the answer to that question would have been Eddie Van Halen. I did interview Eddie Van Halen. It was for the Van Halen 3 album that was on the radio, and I did meet him a couple times. But I never really sat down and did a face-to-face with him. And he was another guy we tried desperately to get on That Metal Show. And he watched the show. And he sent us EVH gear to put on the set. And in the very first season, Don and Jim did a bit where they were out front of the Van Halen show at Madison Square Garden. And it's hysterical if you ever see this. Jim pretends like he has an earpiece in, and then it's connected to Eddie Van Halen in his dressing room before the show. And he's on 34th Street in front of the Garden, and he's interviewing people. He's like, "You got a question for Eddie?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, I wanted to ask him about, is it really true those are keyboards on And the Cradle Will Rock?" And Jim would be like, "He wants to know, Eddie, if it's really..." And Jim, "Eddie don't like that question." He said, "It's stupid." He said, "Why would you ask that?" Eddie says he's so upset by that question that he's not going to go on stage tonight. And the guy's like, "Oh my God, sorry. And Eddie Van Halen saw that and loved it. We were worried. He loved it. And we had back and forth this close to trying to get it. Just never did it. You know, we had Michael, we had Sammy. We never had Dave either. But Eddie was always the guy we loved to have done an in-depth with. But the one guy I never interviewed at all would be, that's alive still, would probably be Jimmy Page, just because he's the architect of so much of what we have now. Anybody else? Brian's gonna get his steps in here. You're looking slender too, by the way, Brian. Gave me a nice compliment.
I gotta try and keep up with you.
Yeah.
I have one comment and one question. You know, you got a couple years on me, and I was sort of late to rock, you know, but just hearing you talk about your career, the media has changed so much, you know, from, like you said, just vinyl to CDs and then even the TV, but the music is always the same, you know, so I always find myself going back and I just want to hear AC/DC play School Days by Chuck Berry because I just love the groove. So that's one comment. And the question is, what can you tell us about your approach to interviewing that you think is unique?
I really don't, and this is probably not necessarily the best advice for people, but I don't really do any, for an interview, hardly any prep at all. And the reason why is because, and again, I'm not trying to sound arrogant here, but I live it every day. Like, it's literally my whole life for 43 years has been music. So it's not like, sometimes you'll see people and they'll be scheduled to do an interview and it's like they gotta get all this prep and background information and read up and this and that. And unfortunately, I don't have to do that because I literally live it. Now, occasionally there'll be a band I don't know that much about, or if they're a new band, or if there's something, I'll do a little background, I'll read the one sheet. One of the things I really try to do, which is getting harder and harder, is if a band's promoting a new record, I try to get a physical copy of the record. For me personally, CD, because that's my favorite. But the reason for that is I want liner notes. I want packaging. There's so many times I'll get something really cool to ask an artist by physically holding the record that I'll pick out. Whether it's in the credits, the songwriting credits, the liner notes, who worked on it, who took the photos, the artwork. You don't get that when you just get a file in an email. So I sometimes will always ask for a physical copy. And, you know, look, I'm really lucky because I've done this so long, the big intangible that I have is most of these artists, I've got a relationship with them. Most of them I've interviewed 30 times, 40 times. They know me, I know them. Some don't, but most I do. The newer acts, obviously, I don't. I just interviewed Youngblood. I didn't know him at all personally. He didn't know me. We had a great conversation. It went great. But I try to have a conversation instead of and just make it loose and comfortable, you know? I just had Brian Setzer on. Brian Setzer does not do interviews. He doesn't like doing them. But his manager, and I don't know Brian, his manager came back to me and said, I'm surprised, but Brian wants to do an interview with you. He's seen your stuff, so that makes me feel really good. Now, the flip side of that is there are artists who will not do interviews with me because I know too much. And they're afraid. And there's a lot of artists who want to just sell their current shit and get out. They don't want to be asked a tough question. They don't want to be asked anything about might be a sensitive area. And I'm not a gotcha guy at all. But I do feel the need, and I tell them all the time, it's my job to ask the questions that the people that listen to me want to know. And if I don't do that, or you don't allow me to do that, then I can't do this, because it looks like I'm an idiot and I dropped the ball. So one of the things I have a huge problem with is if an artist or a handler for the artist gives me guidelines and ground rules. You can't ask this, don't ask about that, you can't talk about this. Because every time, that's exactly what everybody wants to know about, right? So I will tell them, you can answer anytime, any way you want, but you can't tell me I can't ask it. Because that would be like me telling you you can't play your biggest song, you know? It's not trying to be exploitive. One of the things I do not do, which most people have probably picked up on, I do not go into gossip land. I don't give a shit about your alimony, your child support, how many times you've been married, who you're banging on the side. I don't care about any of it. I really don't. I care about music. So, Keith Urban, the country artist, I got to know him recently. We're in touch, great guy. And Keith is a huge rock fan, and he wants to come on the show. One day, the media explodes because him and Nicole Kidman are getting divorced. I didn't even know he was married to Nicole Kidman. I swear to God. I swear to God, I did not know. And I text him and I go, Keith, I'm assuming now would not be a good time to do the interview? And he's like, yeah, dude, I gotta probably lay low for a little bit. And I go, hey man, just so you know, hope you're doing okay. I'm here when you're ready, you know? So getting that trust with people, and I said to him, I go, you don't know me that well, but I'm not the guy that's gonna go there, so you don't have to worry about that. I want to talk to you about your first band being called Fractured Meter after an Ace Frehley song, which is a true story. So I'm gonna ask things and go in places that nobody else is gonna do, and I think that's really a big intangible for what I'm able to do. And I have a close enough relationship with these guys, but again, not everyone's gonna like it. There are people that will not talk to me. There are people that, you know, they heard that I might have said something and you just gotta roll with that. And it's become a really big problem now because of the internet and because of how much fake shit is out there. And that has become the hardest part of my job every day, going on the radio. Getting press releases, seeing stuff online, and wondering if it's real. Because now you've got fake photos, fake content, stuff that looks totally real, and it's really hard because I'm trying to be responsible. I don't want to be the first. I don't necessarily have to be the first guy to talk about something. I want to make sure if I'm talking about it, that it's real and it's happening. And I gotta make sure, like, you know, even when people die, you know, did they really die? Are they dead? I remember when Tom Petty died. That was even before things were as crazy as they were. He's not dead yet. You can't say it. Like, Jesus Christ, like, what the fuck? It's nuts. I click on things routinely on the internet. Like the other day I was on YouTube, I'm like, Slash talking about Ace Frehley. I'm like, oh, I'd like to hear this. I click, it was me. It was my interview. Somebody else put up. So it's really, really hard to navigate because My mom will call me all the time. It's like, oh, I didn't know that you were going to Hawaii with Sammy Hagar for a week. Oh, Mom, what are you talking about? Well, it's on the internet, and there's a picture of you and him on the beach with a pina colada. Well, it's not real. I mean, these are true stories. And the other thing, real quick, on the gossipy end of things, I had Gavin Rossdale on my show once. And I was talking to Gavin Rossdale, and I said something like, you know, so, we just were talking. I go, so you got kids? And he's like, yeah, I got kids. And he's like, I don't get to see them all that much because their mom, and, you know, has them in Oklahoma. And again, I'm so disconnected from that world. I didn't put together and had no idea that he was married to Gwen Stefani and that there was this well-publicized divorce and custody battle and she was with some country guy in Oklahoma. I had no idea. I couldn't care less. I'm like, Gavin, I want to talk about writing glycerine. I mean, whatever, you know? And so he volunteered this. He's like, yeah, it sucks. I don't see my kids or whatever. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm sorry. You know, that's tough. It's a true story. Next day, I'm at home having dinner, and Entertainment Tonight or Access Hollywood or something is playing just on the background on the TV. And I'm eating dinner in the back of the TV, and I swear to God, I hear, and tonight on Access Hollywood, Gavin Rossdale tells Trump Nation that he's upset about losing his kids to Brunson. I go drop the fork. I'm like, did I just hear what I heard? I went up. You know how you can rewind the TV if you have a DVR? I have it on my phone. I rewound it. Because the biggest story was what he said about his kids. I moved right past it. Because I didn't even put it together. But it made lead story that night on Entertainment Tonight or whatever it was. And, you know, meanwhile, I could talk to him all day about writing everything Zen or anything from that first record. Nobody's going to cover that. But the minute you go into gossip land, it's clickbait time. I hate that, you know, so I try to stay away from that. But the bottom line is I've been complimented a lot about my interviews, and it means a lot to me. And I just kind of try to talk to them like I talk to anybody else. And with a lot of them, I have a great benefit of having a comfort zone with these people because they know me. That can work against me too. One last thing on this, it can be tough because last week I had Rachel Bolan, the bass player from Skid Row, on my show. Rachel and I talked for an hour and a half. We talked about everything. It was great. If you haven't heard it, it's on the podcast right now. We had a great conversation because I grew up with those guys. And of course I have to ask them, since they don't have a singer, if they thought about bringing Sebastian. And, you know, he answered and gave his answer, but of course the next day, that's the only thing that hit all the internet and all that. But he's a cool guy. He knows that's me doing my job. I didn't pick at it. I didn't go, what are you fucking crazy, man? I asked the question, he gave the answer, we moved on. So, you know, you just have to learn some balance, and hopefully the people you're talking to are cool enough, like Rachel, to understand that's you doing your job, and you have to strike the right tone, and you have to find a way to do it, get in and get out without it just, you know, punching them in the face. So.
Hey, Phil Sims called. He said he saw this picture of you wearing a Cowboys jersey, and he would like to talk to you about that.
Who said that?
Phil Sims. Phil Sims from the Giants. He called. He said he wants to talk to you about this picture he saw online.
You keep poking the bear. You got a whole different Giants team this year, baby. Get ready. Get ready. A whole different thing coming in September. No more doormats in the NFC East. I'm telling you. You're on notice, Brian. Anybody else? The Giants are pretty much the only other thing besides music I'm absolutely crazy about, so that's why Brian's winding it up.
Hey, thanks for being here. Appreciate
Thank you for
coming
coming.
back. Thank you, and also what you do for music and promoting it, and everything that you do is an inspiration to all of us that love music, because we feel exactly what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Tommy, man, I hear that a lot, and it really, really does mean the world to me, so thank you.
My question is, I got my friend here, Jeff. We flew in from Phoenix. We're going to the Rush show tomorrow.
I was going to say, please don't tell me not just for this.
Yeah, so
That's a lot of pressure.
no, we did. But he didn't know about it, and I go, we're gonna go see Eddie Trunk. He goes, I think I heard of him. What does he do? I go, he talks about music. And he goes, are we going to play like music in the band? I go, no, we're just going to talk about music. He goes, that sounds cool. So,
I hope I didn't bore you to tears, sir.
but
Thank you for coming.
luckily for the Rush show tomorrow night. So my question is, do you remember what was the first Rush song you ever heard that you said, who is this or what is this?
Completely. My local rock station in New Jersey that I grew up listening to and then working at, where I started that show, and I told that story earlier, the same station, they used to do this thing where every Tuesday night or something, they would play the whole side of one album. Just one side of one album, for side A of whatever record they were featuring that night. 1980, the DJ said, we're gonna play Rush, the new album, Permanent Waves, and from Spirit of Radio on, the minute I heard Spirit of Radio, I was like, well, and I used to record on my cassette player those albums. And it would give me a good idea, because if I liked the first half of the record, or liked what I heard, then I'd go buy the record. So Permanent Waves, Spirit of Radio, to this day Permanent Waves is my favorite Rush album, and immediately went and got the record, and then I think after that I got Chronicles, which was the first 3 albums in one package, and then just went all in from there. So that was definitely a big moment. I remember hearing Spirit of Radio and the whole thing, and then starting to get into radio and all. It was really cool. You want to go to photos? Should we go to some photos? Yeah, I don't want to keep you guys here all night. So take a look at a few photos, then we'll wrap it up. So, yeah, if we could lower the lights so we could see. All right, so I'm just going to rip through some stuff here. Can you guys see that all right?
And Eddie, you can see it over there too as well, but I'll drop the lights a bit.
Do you want to dim the lights more, or can you guys see it? You can see? Okay, so again, I don't know what's coming up, so I'm just going to kind of give you guys some stories if I have them on these. That's backstage at that metal show. That's Doug Pinnick over there on the right. That's me with a Hawaiian t-shirt. In the middle, one of my favorite guitar players of all time, the late great John Sykes. Tom Morello and Mike Portnoy. Tom and Mike to this day are some of my great friends. Doug Pinnick, who I also love and have known forever. Doug, King's X were signed to Megaforce. We signed them, so I did King's X from when they were just like a brand new band coming up, and we were the first label to sign them and work with them. So, but that was backstage at that metal show, and one of the cool things about what happened backstage, we used to do 2 shows a day. So we would have artists cross over backstage, the ones coming in for the next show, and we got some really cool mashups of different people that we would have all in these shots. Sykes came on that day with Portnoy to announce a new band, which was going to be called Bad Apple, with Billy Sheehan, which never ended up happening. But he actually came on the show to announce it, and then when John decided he didn't want to do it, I plugged in Richie Kotzen and it became the Winery Dogs. So that's the history of that. But John, I still can't believe he's gone. I have like my top 5 probably favorite guitar players, and John is up there. Never in my life heard a guitar tone like that. And to be able to sit, I got to know John, he was a friend. And to sit next to him and just see him take that Les Paul, and the guy had a sound that came out of that amp. Like, I remember I used to always say to him, John, what is it? How do you get that sound? He goes, oh mate, everyone's trying to figure it out. He goes, it's right here, man. His hands. I said, yeah. Monster. What else we got? Same deal. Backstage at that metal show, Lars and Sammy, and I didn't realize when we did that Metallica was the opening act on that Monsters of Rock festival in, what was that, 87? 88. And Metallica was like billed under Dokken on that thing. Where it got to the point where Dokken was like, no mas, and wanted to flip. So they hadn't connected in a long time. And they were on separate shows, and they were super excited to see each other. That's just a great photo. And that was where they kind of reconnected, the two of them. And both of them I can honestly say are among the coolest, nicest people. What you see is what you get. They never forgot where they came from. They are incredibly cool. Sammy took me to Japan a couple years ago with him. First time I ever went there. Amazing. Lars and Metallica were just super cool to me, helping me out with a song for my documentary. Nothing but respect, because those guys have made so much money and have been so successful, but they are still, neither of them have ever forgotten where they came from, and I got so much respect for that.
What would you call that trio right there? What would that band name be?
Well, I'd be the dead weight, that's for sure. Because I'd be playing, so I call it, if I'm in it, I'd call it Dead Weight. That would be the name of the band. What else we got? So, yeah, that's still tough for me to look at. That is probably, that may have been the last time I saw Ace. That was last winter, and Ace was living, still hard for me to talk about Ace sometimes, guys, I'm sorry, but Ace was living right up the street from me, not up the street, about 20 minutes away from me in New Jersey, and we went and filmed with him for my documentary, which has not come out, but is gonna, at the end of this year or next year. And I remember calling him and I said, will you know, we're gonna do this doc. He was like, come on up, brother, whatever you need. And I remember I rang the doorbell to his house. It was the first time I went to his house, I rang the doorbell. And I said, he answers the door, he goes, come on in. He goes, wait a minute. And he sees the guy with the camera in the back, he goes, go outside. I go, what? He goes, his camera goes, take your fucking camera out. And the guy's like, what? He goes, film like Ed walking up to the door, ringing the doorbell, and I'll answer and be like, And I remember it was like 20 degrees outside, and the guy making my documentaries from Arizona, he's like, I'm fucking freezing. I'm like, just go out and do it. So he goes back out and he's gonna ring the doorbell. It's like, as the doorbell rings, he's sort of, Ed, what the fuck are you doing here? Come on in. And then we went, and that was, I had a friend with me who took those photos, and that was in his studio in the basement of his house. And it's funny, Brian would know this better than I, but I don't know anything about guitars. Here I am in this incredible guitar shop. I don't play, I don't know anything. I just know what the shapes are and what I think looks cool. But Ace they just auctioned off one of Ace's guitars and went for $550,000. I don't know, it could have been one of those. I almost could have tripped on it. I don't know which one it was, but Brian, do you know which one that was? Huh? Budokan 76 Les Paul or something? I don't know, but
Hey, like a lot of guys of my generation, he's why I play guitar, that guy right there.
Yeah, Ace was the real deal, man. I mean, we have history. As I told you about earlier, we maintained a friendship for 40 years. He was always there for me. I tried to always be there for him. I did a party 2 years ago for my 40th year in radio. That video's coming, by the way. Sammy played, Ace played. It's just hard for me to believe he's no longer. I still haven't really processed it. And again, he probably more so than anybody else, of all the artists I've dealt with, worked with, became friends with, he and I were the closest. We never weren't like, you know, he'd just call me up, hey brother, what's going on? And he'd send texts with 1,000 emojis and spaceships and stuff. And, I miss all that stuff, and I miss seeing him and hanging out with him. And I could literally do, and I've been asked to do shows like this where I just talk about Ace. I feel like it's too soon for that, but who knows down the line. Speaking of Rush, that's appropriate. There's Getty and Alex. That is season 1 of that metal show. And that is really important for me because, remember, season 1, nobody had ever seen the show before. Nobody knew what it was. It hadn't aired yet. And I reached out to those guys in Canada, told them what I was doing. I said, will you do the show? And nobody knew what it was, and they said, yeah, we'll come do it for you, Ed. And they flew, we did it in New York, that one, flew on their own dime from Toronto. I remember it was the day after their Canadian Thanksgiving. I remember that because I had no idea until they told me that Canada had a Thanksgiving. Just the best people, again, real people, great people. And I don't know if the photo's in there, but that day we also shot with Ace, the other show. And again, Ace, Kiss, and Rush have tons of history. And Ace had not seen them, or they hadn't seen Ace in years. And I remember they were so happy to see each other, and I remember Ace going up to Alex and giving him a hug, going, the fucking bag! The bag! The fucking bag! Later I said to Alex Lifeson, I go, what the hell was he calling you the bag for? And Alex goes, like back in 75, we were on tour together, and he goes, I used to get really baked. And he goes, I used to put a paper bag over my head and smoke a joint through the hole in the paper bag. He goes, and Ace thought it was the funniest thing he ever saw. He just goes, do the fucking bag! So here you are 30 years later at this point, and Ace is going, the bag is here, the fucking bag! That is just a photo that's just as bizarre as hell, because that is me, Carrot Top, and Sebastian Bach in his bed with these, we're all clothed, thankfully. I'm holding a Kiss pillow, which of course is Sebastian's, with a Skid Row Slave to the Grind artwork behind us. I actually don't know who that guy is next to Sebastian. My God, anything, that could be an incriminating photo if anybody had clothes off, gosh. So Sebastian has been, up until just like yesterday, has been living in Vegas where I am now most of the time. And Sebastian is probably the most faithful listener of my daily radio show on 103. He has talked about it from the stage. He is like, so Sebastian, in Vegas, the show would go on at noon live. Sebastian don't wake up until 3 or 4 o'clock. So he listens like the next day on delay on the app. So like 2 days after I've done or said something, I'll get a text or a call from him like, I gotta talk, I'm doing Ace voice for Sebastian. He's like, I gotta talk to you about this and that, because Sebastian did that 3 days ago. But he's always on a couple-day delay. But he's the best. He's like the most hardcore rock fan I ever met. And he has these great parties at his house in Vegas, or at least used to. And I don't remember how we ended up there. Carrot Top's a friend as well, but we had a great time and somebody decided to take a picture of us being stupid, so there you go. Okay, anybody know who that guy is? Not Hugh Jackman. That guy is a guitar player that I'm asked about more than anybody right now, every day.
Vito Bratta.
Vito Bratta. That is Vito Bratta. That's the last known sighting of Vito Bratta. That is, all right, so there's a heart. That's probably 12 years ago, roughly 12, 13 years ago. One of my parties for my radio show, Vito came out of hiding and came to I had no idea, he came up on me and somebody captured that picture, which is great. As you can see, Vito is alive and well. People ask all the time, there's everything in the world about him, every rumor imaginable. You know, what's going on with him? I heard he sliced his fingers off working in a deli, and all not true. Vito, brilliant guitar player, but he was just not, I say this all the time, there's people in this business who are lifers and will die on stage and will not stop no matter what, and then there's people that want to come, make a mark, and disappear. He was one of those guys. And he made his mark. He's completely checked out of the music industry, still lives in the house he grew up in Staten Island. Very happy, takes care of his family, and he's a great guy. He just is not interested in going out in clubs, in vans, playing somewhere at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night, be a part of that circuit. He just was never, he did it did what he did, and he's done with it. People have a hard time, somebody that talented, believing that that's all it is, but it really is. So that, you guys know, so there's only, the guy in the robe is a famous guitar player. You know what the guy in the robe is? There you go, J.P. Lee. That is 1983. That is me on the far right. The other two guys on the other side are just two good friends of mine. The guy in the black jacket is still one of my best friends. And the story on that is that was my first year in radio. And Ozzy was on the Bark at the Moon tour, played the Meadowlands in New Jersey. The opening acts were Motley Crue and Wasted. And I had just started in radio, and they came to the radio station and they asked if I would be interested in going on stage and handing Ozzy a goblet of wine in the middle of the song Journey to the Center of Eternity. It was a radio promotion thing. They were schmoozing the program director. So I was the young kid who was into metal, so they sent me to do it. And there may be shots later of me in the outfit, but I had to wear like a monk's robe. And I had to walk out on stage in the middle of 15,000 people, hand Ozzy the goblet, turn around and walk away. And I did it. And it was amazing. But the thing with Jake, who I did not know, of course, at the time, I'll never forget this. Jake, so, you know, Ozzy's here at the center of the stage. And Jake is over here. And I'm walking in front of Jake. My knees are shaking. I'm like, you know, the goblet is, there's Ozzy. It's my hometown arena, 15,000 people. I'm like, Jake's guitar cord was going right across where I was. And I was this close to taking a header with the goblet in front of 15,000 people. And just as I was about to do it, Jake saw what was going to happen, and he took his cord and whipped it so it came up in front of my face and it stopped. Turn right off. I mean, it was crazy. And Jake, to this day, like, of course, he doesn't remember any of it, but Jake lives in Vegas as well. I'm like, you saved my ass in front of 15,000 people, man. I'll never forget it. So afterwards, that's the photo that we took of from that night. Of course, my friend on the left with the Kiss shirt, and by the way, on the back of the shirt I'm wearing is also a Kiss Lick It Up album cover.
Hey, Eddie, can you tell us a little bit about your buddy Ron who takes all these photos that is in reference in your books and all that kind of stuff?
Yes, you see on a lot of these photos that are not selfies, Ron Akiyama Photography. Ron is, to this day, one of my best friends, and he has taken photos for a long time, non-sanctioned, meaning like sneaking cameras in and stuff. But once we became friends in the early 80s, we worked at a record store together. I helped him out and got him photo passes for a lot of things. And he's pretty much documented my life. As a matter of fact, if you have either of my two books, almost all the photos in both of those books were done by him. And to this day, we're still great friends. So yeah, you see his name on a lot of these. That is recent. That's 2 years ago in Japan with Marty Friedman. Marty Friedman, for those of you that don't know, the great guitar player from Megadeth, Marty moved to Japan and is a full-time resident in Japan. He moved there probably 15 years ago, maybe longer, speaks fluent Japanese, and when I went there on tour with Sammy Hagar, he was the only guy I knew that lived there, and I sent him a note and told him I was coming, and he said, oh, I gotta show you some places, and let's go get some food, and sure, so I spent the day with Marty in Tokyo, went to his apartment, we went for lunch, and that, you know, it's one of those barbecues there in the middle, obviously, you can see the flame. So, funny story about that just came to mind. You know, Marty, I don't speak any Japanese, Marty was translating everything. So he goes, what do you like to eat? Because over there, they got every kind of like meat, like crazy, tongue and shit I never eat. And I go, Marty, I'm simple, man, some steak, some chicken, that's all good. And you order it raw, and then you cook it on that thing. It's a whole Japanese tradition. So I'm eating, and Marty goes to me, how's the food? I go, it's great, I really like it. He goes, just curious, how do you know exactly what I ordered? What? Because I ordered it in Japanese. I could have ordered like intestines, cow's dick. You don't know what you're eating. And then I started to get sick and it was calm down, I didn't do it. It's what you wanted. He goes, I only did that when my mom came to visit. I'm like, are you kidding me? He was dead serious too. But Marty's a great dude, and he was he hung out with me for the day. Because, Sammy and those guys, they were prepping for the show, so I had time during the day to just sightsee, and Marty helped me out and spent some time with me. It was great. Same trip, that's the streets of Tokyo, and that's Joe Satriani, Kenny Aronoff, and Michael in the back. I can't tell you what an experience that was just 2 years ago to have done that. I was talking to Sammy on the air, and I said to him, Sammy, what else you have left? At that point, you're like 76, what else are you gonna do? And he goes, oh, I'm gonna go back to Japan, man. And I go, yeah, he goes, you haven't been there in a long time. I go, I've never been there. And he's like, what do you mean you've never been there? I was like, he goes, how have you never gone? I go, never gone. He goes, well, come with me. And this was on the air, and I thought he was just saying it. And we got off the air, and I texted him. And I go, are you being serious about that offer to come to Japan? He goes, yeah, come with us. And he goes, I got everything. He goes, all you got to do is get your flight. He goes, hotel is everything. What an opportunity. So I did it. And, we were, it was funny, people were always telling me, like, hotels in Japan, the rooms are really small and all that. Not when you go with Sammy, they're not. We were in the Four Seasons. We were in places I'd have no business being in if I wasn't traveling with those guys. So it was such a cool experience, and of course the band was phenomenal. Kenny's amazing, Michael's one of my favorite people in the world, and like Sammy calls him, Joe's the alien, man. Joe walked around Japan that whole time with that hat on, looked like that, nobody stopped him. Everybody just went towards Sammy. Joe looked at me one time, he goes, I love this. Because nobody gives a shit about me with Sammy here. What else we got? Oh, that's the same concert I told you about, but that's with Mick Mars. Because like I told you, Motley was the opening act. So that's just me, my two friends, same backstage after we did the bit with Ozzy, with Mick. I know we've gone a long time, we're gonna wrap it up in a bit, you guys. You want a few more or no? Yeah! All right, I don't want to keep it too long. That's, of course, Alice Cooper, and that's also 2 years ago, and that was at the House of Blues in Vegas, and that was for the 40th. I did a huge event for the 40th anniversary of my radio show, 40 years of being on the air, and Sammy Hagar led that because he was the only artist we advertised. Everyone else was a surprise because I didn't even know what was going to happen. And then as it went, you name it, they came and played. Alice got in touch with me about 2 weeks before the event and said he wanted to do a few songs. He goes, do you have any room for me? You're Alice fucking Cooper. Yeah, we got room for you. Flew in. Again, the thing that I'll never forget about that party, beyond how great it is, and I have a pro shot audio video that will come out, I promise you. Just gonna put it on YouTube soon. But the thing, there's a ton of fan stuff that were there, but I got the pro video. The thing I will always remember, and it's so important for people to know about that party, all of those people that showed up and played, not one of them was paid a penny. Not one of them was paid their travel, nothing. They all came because they wanted to be there for me and do it, and that meant the world to me. I could have went out and paid everybody a ton of money, got investors. No, I told, even the people who helped me organize, I don't want one person paid. I want people to come that want to be here for the party. Sammy wasn't taking a penny. I'm not about to pay anybody else. And everybody that showed because they wanted to be there, which makes that night 1,000 times more special. So I appreciate all these guys. That's one of my favorite pictures ever. And that is 1989. That's 1989. That is me when I had gray hair in the middle. Everybody else has gray hair too. That is, of course, Skid Row, the original lineup. And that next to me, as I told you, we got history for days, is Ace Frehley. And I told Ace, see, the Skid Row guys I grew up with in New Jersey. And they had just done their first record. They were opening for Bon Jovi at the arena in New Jersey. And I told the Skid Row guys that I was working with Ace, and they didn't believe it, because they were like such Kiss freaks, they were freaking out. So I told Ace, I said, you should come see this band. I think they're really good, they're gonna take off. So Ace goes, I'll call a fucking limo, let's go. As he would do. At that time, a limo with a ton of beers in the back and God knows what else. So we go out to the arena, we go in. That night, I think they had Ace go up with them and play Cold Gin. And then afterwards, we took that photo. Just one of my favorite photos ever, because it just captures just such a moment of 1989. We're all young and we're there with one of our heroes for all of us. And you could see their faces, you know, look at their faces. They're just like in disbelief that they're there with Ace. And it just captures something that's so great. So I love that shot. That's probably like 10, 15 years ago. So that is me on the end. That's Rat with Don Dawkins sitting on the steps. So it's Rat, Don sitting on the steps, and right next to me is Dawkins' guitar player, John Levin. But that actually is the original lineup of Rat, with the exception, of course, of Robin, who was passed away by then. But the story of that is, there is this guy who has a lot of money, and he's a big fan of 80s rock. So he offered to charter a plane for all of us. We were going from, well, I forget what city to what city. So he chartered a plane. So we were all like super psyched, like, yeah, we're going on a private plane, this is great. So I remember it was Dawn or somebody said, hey, we gotta get a photo before we get on the plane. That photo almost became the last photo that anyone saw of any of us, because that plane almost went down that night. We got up we took that photo, we got up on that plane, and the flight was only an hour, I forget where we were going, and all of a sudden that thing started smoking. And there's smoke, and we were flipping out, and there was some sort of engine malfunction. And I remember John Levin, who's next to me in that photo, he was next to me, squeezing me like a teddy bear. I was like, Tony's gonna be all right. And we were all like white, man. I was scared shitless too. Needless to say, we landed safely. They subbed out the plane. But always when I look at that photo, I'm like, holy shit, that could have been the photo like you see on the news, like, and just before they took off, here they are. So sometimes flying private is not all it's cracked up to be. The plane's in great shape. Look at a couple more. There's one of my guitar heroes, Michael Schenker. Yeah! And anybody who knows anything knows I'm a massive, massive UFO fan. And Michael is definitely one of my guys. Although I always have to say I love the guy that came after him as well, the late great Paul Chapman. And I love those records. But I love photos like that when somebody else takes them and instead of a posed shot, you just catch the moment. And to me, it's still surreal as a fan when I look at something like that, and like, you know, Michael knows me. He's like, oh, Andy, how are you, man? You know, having a nice conversation. It's like, I never take that shit for granted. It just still blows my mind, especially with guys that were just like, you know, heroes of mine growing up. So I'm glad Michael is healthy and happy and sober and still playing great. And it's always great when I get a chance to talk to him. There's Jimmy Page. So again, did not interview him, but I did meet him, and that was after a screening. They did a screening in New York of the Zeppelin concert film, How the West Was Won, and afterwards they had a private party, and Jimmy and John Paul Jones, who I also met that night, were both there. So that was my one time actually getting a moment with him. That is, okay, so I also go way back with the guys in Anthrax. Same deal, we grew up together as kids in New York, and we used to go to concerts together even before they were a known band. But Anthrax was signed to Megaforce. So when I first started working in Megaforce around 86, we did a video, that would have been for the video for Indians. That was on the set of the Indians video, and it was so cool. They used to always have the camouflage on the amps, but anyway, just a cool photo of me on the set with, I think that's probably Scott's guitar.
You almost look like you knew how to play it.
What's that?
You almost look like you knew how to play it.
Another shot from the set of that metal show, Lars Portnoy, and that's Rob Flynn from Machine Head. Again, those moments were great. Those are obviously were off camera, but we would just all share stories and laugh and have a great time before and after the shoots, and that really kind of captures that. Okay, there's a funny story about this. Maybe I should end on this one, because again, I don't want to keep you guys too long. Okay, so this ties in with the Giants, as you can see from that guy's shirt. This is in Japan on that same tour 2 years ago with Sammy Hagar. This is so crazy. I don't know if there's anybody in Japan who has a fucking clue who I am, right? I have no clue. Internet, you never know, whatever. So we get to Japan, and they did three shows in Japan. I, of course, was with them. Osaka, Nagoya, Tokyo. And at every show, that guy on the right is running around with that sign that says, "We love Eddie." And every time we'd see him, in Japan, the shows start really early. 6 o'clock, the headliner goes on. You're out by 8. So it can still be daylight, it's early. So every time, whether I was going in or out of the show, because I was in the vehicle with the band, you'd see this guy on the ramp backstage with the sign, "We love Eddie, we love Eddie." So, every time Sammy or Michael or Kenny or Joe would say to me, "Eddie, look, you got a fan, you got a fan." And every time I would look at them and go, "You idiots, what are you playing on this tour? You're playing Van Halen songs. He's saying 'We love Eddie' because you're paying tribute to Eddie Van Halen. It's not for me." I'm like, you realize what kind of American idiot I look like going, "Hey, I'm Eddie, who are you?" You know? And they're like, "I don't know, dude, I think he's here for you." I go, "He's not here for me. Don't embarrass me." Because those guys love to bust my balls, so I figured they were just setting me up too. And I'm like, I am not gonna go out. The guy could give two shits about me or know who I am. Last night we were in Japan. In Japan, they follow you everywhere. They know everywhere you are. They're on the trains. The fans go everywhere. Last night we're in Japan. Sammy's tour manager, I'm eating down the hall backstage. Sammy's tour manager comes, he goes, "Hey Ed." "Yeah, what's up, Wayne?" He goes, "You know, you got a fan that's been following us around." I go, No. He goes, "Come here." We go into his office, and there's a window. And he looks there and goes, "Yeah, he's right there." I go, No. That guy's been following us the whole time. It's Eddie Van Halen, it's not me. The band's playing Van Halen, it's not about me." He goes, "I don't know, dude." He goes, "Get closer to the window." I'm like, looking, I go, "It's not." The guy sees me, starts going, "Oh." Now, meanwhile, let me also tell you, the guy had a jacket on that was zipped up. So I did not see that shirt. But I walked close to the window, I walked close to the glass, and he's going, "Oh." And Wayne goes to me, "Go talk to him, I'm telling you he's there for you." I go, "I still don't know, man, it's so awkward." And the guy's going like this, and then the guy unzips the jacket and points to the Giants logo. I'm like, holy shit, he is here for me, let me go down there. So I went down, you see, I couldn't have been happier because it was like such a relief. I'm like, and I'm like trying to train, he doesn't speak English, I'm going, I wasn't blowing you off, I thought it was Eddie Van Halen, Van Halen. He goes, no, you, giant. So I had to get the photo with the We Love Eddie sign and the guy in the Giant shirt. You see, Brian, the Giants are even international, man. In Japan.
Hey, you give me 5 minutes with ChatGPT, we'll have that guy wearing a Cowboys jersey.
It's a good thing you sound like the guy in Charlie Brown up here, because I can't hear a word you just said, so you can laugh all you want. Anyway, yeah, screw that. Listen, I could go forever with this stuff, you guys. We've already done almost 2 hours, and I can't thank you enough. First of all, we've done 2 hours. Seriously, thank you so much for being here. Every time I come here, it's such a blast. I'm always kind of like never know, and it means so much. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had some fun. And for those that listen to me on the radio every day, thank you. For those that don't, every day, 2 o'clock, local time, channel 103. And if you can't listen at that time because you have a job, you can always just pull it up on the app. And there's also a podcast with some of the interviews, and that's totally free.
Tell Eddie what you told me.
Today is our 30th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations. And I thought you were just going to say, and you just did 2 hours that I'll never get back in my life. Well, I'm glad, thank you.
You're the anniversary.
I was just going to say, my God, what a woman you have if she tolerates this.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for fucking Eddie Trump.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. And Brian, if it's all right with you, as you guys walk out, if you want to come say hello, take a photo, whatever, and I got some stickers for my show. I'm happy to give it to you. No charge, nothing like that. And how about April? Actually, here's what I'm going to do. I did this last time too. Is April still back there? Okay, so I'm going to go to April's table, come and say hello, take a sticker, and she